Welcome back everyone to the weekly Mailbox, your chance to ask me questions about anything you would like from the world of Formula 1, Formula E, motorsports or anything in between. As always, 5 questions from you, the viewers at home this week, sent in from YouTube, Twitter, Instagram, all that good stuff. So if you want your chance to be entered in next week's video, feel free to send me comments on any of those platforms. But we're going to start off today with question number 1 from Theodore Kepler, who asks, do you think the F1 2020 game ratings were fair? Now, a lot of people I've seen, well, I say a lot of people, a couple of people have been doing full-on videos talking about this, and I ummed and ahed because they're certainly controversial, is the best way of putting it. If you haven't seen the ratings, they should be up on screen now if I've remembered to do them. But Lewis Hamilton has the best overall rating with a 94. It's then Verstappen and Bottas on 90, and then I think the next best after those two is Vettel and then Kimi Raikkonen, above Leclerc. I think that says enough, to be totally honest with you. We've got Grosjean, who is the 10th highest rating in the game. I'm fine with that. That was fine with me. And then we've got the likes of George Russell on 75. 75, the third worst on the grid, according to this game. And Nicholas Latifi, bless him, 64, a country mile off the second worst, which is Joe Venazzi, on 73. What I would say is, whilst if I was doing the ratings, I would do them different. What they're trying to do with the My Team system is that drivers like Kimi Raikkonen over time will lose rating, and a couple of seasons down the line will retire from the game. So I think with a lot of those guys, Raikkonen and Grosjean being the two, I think a lot of people think they should be lower. I think because of their age and experience is a higher value, so that when you're 2 or 3 seasons into the game, they'll drop down but still be competitive and then retire. And I think likewise with George Russell, Charles Leclerc, maybe Max Verstappen to a degree, a little bit lower than what they probably should be, due to the fact that over the next couple of years in the game, they will get better and better. So if this was F1 Ultimate Team and these rankings would stay like this for the entire time, yeah, I think you can certainly nitpick at different statistics. I think choosing experience, racecraft, awareness and pace, I think though it's vague, I think it's clever for that reason. And though especially Formula 1 Twitter has been sent into a bit of a frenzy over the last week over this topic, I hate to say this, and I often don't say this, but it is just a game, and it is all part of the world building that Codemasters are trying to do. But less than a month until it comes out, I am very much looking forward to it, and expect more than a few streams of it over on Twitch when it does come out. Question number 2, moving slightly away from Formula 1, not too much though, because we do have a talk of Sebastian Vettel here, comes from Victor. With all of the Formula E talk, it makes me think, could Ferrari make a Formula E team? And if they didn't, do you think that Sebastian Vettel would be a great driver for the job? So we've spoke about Vettel going to Formula E before, and I actually think it would be a really fun and unique twist to the Sebastian Vettel story. And I said it with Alonso. I really feel Formula E needs a world champion to what's their next step to really push them out on a global scale. But I think a driver like Alonso, like a Vettel, still has an opportunity right now to jump into the series and get a couple of world championships under their belt. It's a completely different skill set, Formula E, and it would not be easy like a lot of people think it would be. But it's certainly an opportunity to get your foot in the door early and get a great seat on the grid. So I'll leave Vettel there because I think he'd be a great option for Formula E. But I also think if Ferrari made a Formula E team, that would make even more sense to bring on Sebastian Vettel. But I want to stick with the Ferrari aspect here. Would they make a Formula E team? It's something that I'm not aware they're currently involved in with their road cars, is any electric kind of powertrains or automotives. So that is certainly an aspect where companies like Jaguar, that was always the big one, and Renault as well, before they properly really launched into the electric market, they went to Formula E first. Jaguar in particular did Formula E before they'd even launched a road car, though they'd been working on one. And for Ferrari, that may be something they pay attention to. However, they are a very historic team. They are a team that are drenched in tradition, and I think will be one of those teams that are harder to push towards an electric racing series. And there's a lot of talk about them going to IndyCar. I think that's more likely. However, with the budget cap and with teams like Mercedes, like Ferrari being so big, they're going to have to dramatically reduce their workforce. And that's the reason why Ferrari are even considering IndyCar, is that rather than paying off and getting rid of hundreds of staff behind the scenes over in Italy, instead they're going to make a new workforce for IndyCar. And if IndyCar doesn't work out, then yeah, maybe Formula E could be something they would consider. And there has been talk over the last couple of weeks, I know Formula E Zone did some work on this, with the Scuderia E team. They weren't going to be backed by Ferrari, and actually they had quite a few Turkish links, I believe it was. And whether that's going to come to fruition or not over the next couple of years, we'll have to see. But certainly Ferrari could get on board with those guys, and it would be a great brand to see join Formula E. Do I think it's going to happen over the next couple of years? Probably not. But then a couple of years ago, I probably would have never said the likes of Porsche and Mercedes would consider joining Formula E. So things are changing very quickly in the electric automotive world. And as a huge Formula E fan, it would be great to see Ferrari enter the sport. Question number 3 comes from Mozilla. Really love this question. And apparently I missed this one before. I can't believe I missed this one. But it's about Daniel Ricciardo. And how will Renault treat Danny Ric this season? Back him as normal or treat him like garbage about to be thrown out? I don't have much faith in Cyril, poor Cyril, his leadership, and I worry for my boy Zanny. A lot of Ricciardo fans out there, I think you're certainly warranted to be worried this season. I did a video, well, maybe at the beginning of the week, I think it was, ones to watch in 2020. And I put Esteban Ocon in that list, in my 5 drivers to watch, because I felt Renault would be that team that are going to back him up this season, that are going to give him preferential treatment and give him that bit of confidence and belief that I don't really think he's had in Formula 1 up to this point. But what does that mean for Ricciardo? I think a little bit like Sebastian Vettel, he will be out on his own this season. He's going to have to fend for himself, and both of them, especially Danny Ric, who I think already was pretty much carrying that team last season. No offence to Hulkenberg, and I do love him. I think Ricciardo is too good for a midfield team like Renault. So even if the strategy isn't on his side, I think Ricciardo is good enough to make that difference anyway in the race. And I think qualifying, he has the better pace than Ocon. But certainly, this is a matchup that I think is so hard to call because of this reason that he's not staying with the team at the end of the year. And because of the fact Ocon is going to be hungry to keep pushing and to prove to the Formula 1 establishment he deserves to be there after a season out. It's one of those ones I'm really looking forward to. But I've got a funny feeling there could be fireworks between Ricciardo and Ocon. We didn't really see it between Hulkenberg and Ricciardo. I think there was a couple of incidents, but nothing concrete. Only a little tyre bashing, really. But Ocon, who had a very fire relationship with Sergio Perez, I don't think it'll reach that stage. And I don't think Ricciardo is quite as an aggressive driver as Perez is. But certainly I think there could be tensions within Renault over the season. Question number 4 comes from Alex K. What impact does Ferrari signing Carlos Sainz instead of Giovinazzi have on their junior programme? Will we see Schumacher and Schwartzman in Formula 1 anytime soon? Now, Carlos Sainz going to Ferrari. One of the big things at the time, I wasn't really convinced that he would go there, is that, and a little bit like with Ricciardo, I guess, is that it would kind of cause a bit of a stopper in the junior programme system. I mean, what happens with Giovinazzi now? Realistically, is he going to get another opportunity at Alfa Romeo if Schwartzman, Schumacher, Armstrong, Ilott, any of those in Formula 2 with Ferrari backing, Alesi as well, if any of those are champion or top 3, surely Giovinazzi's out straight away. But what happens if Giovinazzi does a fantastic season in Alfa Romeo this year? Kimi Raikkonen wants to stay for another year, but Ferrari have got one of these amazing talents stuck in Formula 2. And of course, there's the extra added rule in Formula 2 that if you become world champion, you're not allowed to go back. So that's why we saw Pierre Gasly a few years ago. There wasn't a seat in Formula 1 for him to go to because they had, at the time, Ricciardo, Verstappen, Kvyat, Sainz all taking up seats. And Gasly was stuck, so had to do Super Formula. Ferrari, they have that seat at Alfa Romeo, but maybe they'd have to do a little bit of bargaining with Haas. I said last year, and it still pains me that I said this, and I still do believe this, I think they're a team that could do with a bit of a refresh. Gunter, we love him. Could he be there long term? I'm not too sure. Grosjean and Magnussen, I think both of them have their flaws. On their day, both of them could be brilliant, but I think Haas are a team now that need that little bit more consistency from both drivers. But going back to the question, what is the impact that Sainz will have on this whole driver market situation with Ferrari? He's got a 2-year deal, and I think that's the real crux of this, because it's a long enough deal where Sainz is comfortable taking the deal and is happy to do it. It's also a deal that pretty much no matter what, Ferrari have got a couple of years to decipher which one of their juniors is best suited to be in that Ferrari. Because at the moment, if they didn't pick Sainz and it was Giovinazzi or even promoted Schumacher or Schwartzman straight to Formula 1, that would be such a young lineup at Ferrari, such an inexperienced lineup, and I don't think a lot of their higher-ups would appreciate that, and I think as a team, they would perhaps struggle to work with that a little bit. I know speed is a huge part of being a Formula 1 driver, and ultimately, if Schwartzman was the best of all time, they were noticing that, yeah, they'd have him in that car straight away alongside Leclerc. But he's still got to prove himself. Schumacher's still got to prove himself. And with that 2 years breathing room of Sainz, it gives them the option to assess how good Leclerc is, how good Sainz is, see which of those two is the better. I'm going to assume it's Charles Leclerc, but there could be a massive surprise with Carlos Sainz. And Sainz as well, I'm still optimistic he can be right up there at the front and win Grand Prix. So if that relationship is working out, at least they've got Sainz on the books rather than taking a gamble on one of their youngsters. In the short term, yes, it's probably going to mean that Giovinazzi's career will be cut a little bit shorter than probably he would have expected unless he can have a stellar season in 2020. And it probably means for the likes of Schwartzman and Schumacher, it gives them that little bit of extra time to prove themselves and the pressure off a little bit in those junior categories. But it's why I'm interested to know your thoughts in the comment section below, because if Sainz is right up there with Leclerc, and if they're getting on great and they're winning championships, I suppose, well, they wouldn't really need to change anything, would they? It's like Mercedes. They've got George Russell there and waiting, but they're smashing it. Do they really need to change? One maybe for a future transfer talk. I'm working on something with Formula 2 drivers and transfer talk at the moment, and perhaps we'll discuss it a little bit more there. But we'll move on to our final question, and I'm mixing it up this week, ladies and gentlemen. Question 5, our audience participation question. It's your chance to give me your answers. So I want to know your thoughts in that comment section down below. But it comes from me. I'm asking you lot. I'm working next week on, I think it's a season preview. It could be the week after. Anyway, in the build up to the season, I'm trying to look at all the teams, have a little recap of 2020 testing, look at the story so far this year. And one of the things I still haven't worked out, and I don't think any of us will really be able to do it until we get to Austria, and perhaps we'll have to wait till Silverstone or even later to get a real picture, is who will be the best of the rest? What team? What driver? And I honestly have no clue. The top 3, I think, will remain the top 3. Apart from that, I think it's anyone's guess. And there were a lot of talk during winter testing that Ferrari would drop into that midfield and Racing Point would be a team that would emerge in that top 3. No, I'm not seeing that. It would be an incredible story if that did come to fruition and Racing Point were on the podium in the course of our 8 races that we currently have nailed on. I don't see it. Mercedes, Red Bull, I think are going to be that top 2. Ferrari then in P3. And then I think it's going to be between McLaren, Racing Point and Renault. But one of the questions that I saw roughly talking about this, but it was a little bit too vague. And also, I already answered one of their questions, so I don't want favouritism. Was AlphaTauri. Where are they going to be? Because they've pretty much got a carbon copy of last year's Red Bull. And with an improved Honda engine in that car and a great season from them last year, 2 podiums, drivers that are going to be consistent, I would imagine, in Gasly and Kvyat, drivers that have got something to prove, are they going to get in the mix? Haas, they've pretty much got a carbon copy of last year's Ferrari. I know last year wasn't fantastic for them, but both Grosjean and Magnussen proved on qualifying they were brilliant. On average, those two had better qualifying records than I think both the Renault drivers, almost as good as both the McLaren drivers. Though race pace in that car was awful, I wonder this year if they've corrected that, they could be a real dark horse. Williams, I think, will still be at the back. I don't think they'll be behind that much, though. And that's still without talking about Alfa Romeo, where they're going to be. And will Raikkonen have a stellar final season? And we just mentioned Giovinazzi. Pressure's going to be on. He needs to prove. I really don't know. And so I'm going to leave it up to you guys. So I want to know your thoughts in the comment section down below. I don't think I can do a poll anymore. They're taking it away from YouTube. So if I can, I'll put it in the top right-hand corner. If not, just a one-word answer will be fantastic in the comment section down below. And that is your lot for this week's weekly mailbox. If you want to post your questions for next week, you know the drill. Comment section down below, Twitter, Instagram, or YouTube community. Hope you're all well. Hope you're all keeping safe. If you are new, feel free to subscribe. Thank you all very much for watching and hope to see you in the next one.